What did you think of it initially?
Good. It's good.
Oh, I missed these. I missed that. Yeah. It's season one. This is what we do. I would talk. Justin would talk. You get to Jeremy. He'd be like, it was fine.
Yeah, it was really
all
good.
fine. It was okay. It was good. I don't mind it.
I am Ron Swanson. Okay? It takes a lot for me to say more words than I need to.
Welcome to the Dastardly Dingoes podcast, a show that celebrates all things nerdy. You'll get an insider's look into the world of comic books, graphic novels, TV and film, gaming and pop culture, as well as the technologies that drive all of it. Now, are you ready to get nerdy?
Welcome to the Dastardly Dingoes podcast, the show about all things nerdy. We talk about nerd news, movies, TV shows, games, comics, and interview the amazing creators who bring it all to life. I'm Brian.
I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Chad.
Yeah, you are. And brace yourselves, because we're about to get nerdy. All right. Couple things, folks. First of all, this is Chad's inaugural episode as a co-host.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard, sir. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, and that makes me excited. No, we're very, very excited that Chad has now not just become an honorary dingo, but a senior dingo on the Council of Dingoes, if you will.
Capital D dingo.
Oh, look at you. Indeed. That's why you're here. That's why you make the big bucks. So anyway, guys, if you followed season one of Dastardly Dingoes, you know that the foundations of this show are rested upon movie reviews and TV show reviews. That was the entirety of season one. And then 2020 happened. And season two, we switched gears a little bit and started doing interviews with people as well. So to get back to our roots for the next couple weeks, we are going to really dive deep into some movie reviews because some movies actually came out.
That's right.
And we want to talk about them because it's 2021 now and everything went back to normal.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So
everything's fine now.
It's all good. Everything's fine.
As soon as the ball dropped, everything went back.
Right. This is fine. Everything's fine.
Nothing to see here.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. No pandemic.
Yeah.
All right. So this episode, we are going to talk about the movie Soul by Disney and Pixar. Guys, what did you think of it? What did you think of it initially?
Good. It's good.
Oh, I missed these. I missed that. Yeah. It's season one. This is what we do. I would talk. Justin would talk. You get to Jeremy. He'd be like, it was fine.
Yeah, it was
all
good.
fine. It was okay. It was good. I don't mind it.
I am Ron Swanson. Okay? It takes a lot for me to say more words than I need to.
Well, if you're Ron Swanson, then I'm more like Michael Scott. So if I get in a spot where I don't have notes or I haven't really thought about it before, I'll probably say some pretty awkward things. So this is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh,
Fantastic.
Good. This makes me happy. I love that you're gonna say awkward things.
Yes,
So.
just ask my wife. She'll tell you all kinds of examples of things I've said that.
I've known you long enough. I know you got that. All right. Well, Chad, so what were your initial thoughts when you were watching Soul?
So Soul is an interesting movie because it's one of those movies like on my first viewing, I wasn't like blown away by it, but it was one of those movies that I was like, man, this is really good. Like it was really worked on many different levels, which I really appreciate. I mean, Pixar usually does their movies like that, where they're kid movies, but then they bring in a lot of other themes.
Yeah.
But it's one of those, like, you really have to let it sit for a little bit to really appreciate it, because if you don't, then it can be one of those movies you're like, man, why did they make that movie? It wasn't really that good compared to like a Toy Story or something like that. But
right.
I think you mentioned it before, or Jeremy mentioned it, one of y'all mentioned about how this is like, what is it, like the third or fourth movie where they've dealt with like death and like big ideas. So
Yep.
I mean, I love movies like that. So yeah, I was a big fan. I loved it as soon as it was done. It really, one of those movies I went back and thought about quite a bit. So it's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, the other ones were Onward,
Yeah.
and then Coco.
Coco, yeah.
Coco was the one I was thinking
What
of.
was
Yeah.
the other one?
The other one that comes to my mind is not about death, but it's like about depression and stuff, and that's Inside Out.
Oh yeah.
So that's a
Yeah.
pretty heavy topic.
Yeah, for sure.
Sarah told me whenever that came out, she said that some of her like professors. So if you don't know my wife, she's a doctor in med school. They were watching Inside Out because it was such a good analog to kind of like connect all of these thoughts and ideas. And, you know, for a doctor, like, you don't have depression, but you have to be able to recognize it, and you have to be able to figure out like causes and things like that. And so to be able to connect all of those things in a visual way, it did better than, you know, a textbook would.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that movie.
I mean, that's like one of those examples where oftentimes a story can convey something much better than a textbook can. I mean, you basically just said that, but I'm just thinking of like, you know, what, I mean, I went to seminary, so we would read theology books, but a lot of times C.S. Lewis does a lot better, or Tolkien does a lot better of explaining something very profound through a story than sometimes just reading a manual of like, here's the idea or the philosophy or whatever. So
I think just kind of bring it back around. My initial thoughts to Soul was I was actually really I love barbershops a lot.
Okay.
Like I do. Like they're really cool. I love the atmosphere. And so in the trailer to Soul, they focused on that, which the barbershop plays a pivotal role in the movie. Yeah. And I loved that seemed like the whole movie explored African American culture specifically in different facets, but I thought that was a really cool snippet of just a barbershop, what a barbershop is, you know, like you come in, you sit there, you talk, you chat, and it was, I don't know, like there were a lot of different cultural snippets, not just specific to African Americans, but to different people and different different walks of life. I think off the top of my head, I can't really think of any other Disney Pixar movie that really put the spotlight on a teacher the way that this movie did, which I thought, you know, I mean, there are a couple, my friends and older teachers that I had that really came to my mind throughout this movie. Just, you know, the stigma that if you can't teach, you know, you can't do it, you teach it, which is crap. And I think that this movie really explored that, and did it really well. You know, it explored a person who was teaching because he loved to teach, but at the same time, he really wanted that big break. And that was what he really was looking for, you know, for his entire life. And we'll get into that more in a minute. So the next thing, Jeremy, what did this movie mean to you?
Well, I think it, you know, it makes every person that watches it, like, do like a kind of a self-analysis, you know, because it's really about like your passions and your pursuits and the things you love to do versus the things you do for a job, and how those things interact, or how they are completely parallel for somebody's entire life. Like you were talking, you know, his passion to play music professionally, and his teaching music, you know, that's one way for him to kind of intersect those things. But for a lot of people, they have this thing that they do for their job, and then they have this thing that they would love to do professionally but never get the opportunity, and it runs parallel.
Yeah.
And how do you react to that? How do you react in those parallel times where you feel like you can't interconnect those things and you feel divided and things like that? It kind of makes every person, like I said, do a little bit of self-analysis and, say, like, am I doing what I want to do or should be doing? Or, how do you even define those things? I think what really struck me was at the end. So you think about like what the best outcome would be from that story. Is it that he gets to play music, or is it that he impacts the lives of young people? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think the movie ended with the ultimate good, right? He got to do what he wanted, and that's great for him in a silo. But what about all the kids? A big part of the story was his relationship with that kid who got him the gig, that dream gig that he's wanted for his whole life. That was because he had spent time impacting, those young people, and then they grow up and they start playing music, and that's how that all ended up. But then the movie ends with not him going back and doing that, not him realizing that, because I feel like anybody would say that. Anybody would realize impacting kids that's the ultimate good. And I just feel like it ended in a way that I didn't expect it to.
Yeah, I think, just to talk on the ending for a second, I think it was more open-ended. So I don't really think it really ended with him I like that it didn't end with him making a decision one way or the other of what he was going to do. It was like, this is a second chance. I don't know what I'm going to do, and it was, I felt like it brought a realism to that choice instead of just going with the ultimate good. Because I do think you can pull, as the viewer, you can pull from that, like, what did he learn in this process? And I think his relationship with, what was the other character's name? I'm blanking. The
That's her
cat.
name.
Yeah. Well, he was the cat, but the
22.
Thank you. Good grief. Yeah. I was about to say Tina Fey, but I don't know her. I don't remember her character. So yeah, his relationship with 22, he really, like, the whole movie was him essentially figuring out that impacting other people is the ultimate good and is more important than anything else. And so I think, as I was watching it, I really pulled that from the ending, that he's now getting this second chance to live life, because earlier, like, he does get what he wants, right? Like, he goes back to Earth, and he was like, okay, I'm going to play this gig, and he does. And then remember, he walks out of the club, and he's like, now what do we do? Now what? And she's like, we come back and we do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. And he's like, oh, and it's almost that realization, like, I now have what I've longed for, and this is it. And I love that, because it's like that, that goal in his life that he had put so much weight on to bring meaning to his life is now not what really brings meaning to his life. And I think he realized that. And I think in that second chance that he gets at the very end, I think as the viewer, at least for me, I was able to kind of fill in those dots and be like, I think probably what he will do is continue teaching because of the lessons that he learned. They don't come out and say it.
Yeah.
And I like that. But I don't know. That's what I got from it. What do you think, Chad?
Yeah, you guys went right to the same scene that I was going to go to. That very last scene when they walk out of the club, that, as you mentioned, and he looks at the famous jazz player, and it's basically like, what do we do now? And like, for me personally, growing up, drawing and showing people the things I was working on, I'd always hear this constant refrain like, oh, you'll be a famous artist someday, or oh, you'll do this great thing someday, and all that kind of stuff. And it just gets so drilled into your head. And really I'm not just saying that about me. I'm saying that across the board. A lot of times if someone has like a passion for something, let's say they love acting or sports or whatever, you're always told like, oh, you'll make it to the NFL one day, or you'll be on Broadway one day, or whatever it is. You're constantly told that. It's like this, and it really is I don't want to say it's a lie, but it's really like this false narrative that you're fed, that if you do this, that's the sum of life. Like if you actually make it to the NFL, the NHL, the Broadway, whatever it is, that's the goal.
Yeah.
And I think what this movie shows is a bit of realistic side to that. And so I kind of laugh because, so many people, when it comes to comic books, especially, talk about like wanting to work for like Marvel and DC and, make a big name for themselves, go to the conventions and sign all the books and everything. And I'm using that example mostly because that's my world and our world, and we identify with that, but it could apply anywhere. But just for the sake of this illustration, like so many people want that and long for that and think, oh, that's the goal. But I've heard so many scenarios of artists and writers that work for those companies that talk about working 13-hour days, 7 days a week to hit a deadline because you've got to get a book out every month. And that sounds horrible. Like that does not sound like the ideal. Yeah, you want the accolades, you want the go to the convention, you've got a line a mile long and everyone's talking about you. For what though? Yeah. It's like same with working at Disney. I've heard stories where they have to work those 14, 15-hour days to get those movies out.
Yeah.
And I love drawing, but I only love drawing like in small snippets throughout the day. The idea of sitting there for 13 hours drawing the same thing over and over again, even if I love what I'm drawing, sounds hellacious. Like there's nothing about that that's attractive. So I love that idea. He finally reaches his goal and she hits him with the reality of like, yeah, you're here. Now we just keep doing this over and over and over again. And it's really hard work and you keep doing it. And most people don't have that realistic picture of what life is like when it comes to that, know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, not only is it really hard to get to that level, but it's incredibly hard to sustain that and to keep going and doing that. And, I just, that does not sound awesome to me. So I really identified with him because I love to draw just as much as he loves the music, but the idea of doing another job so you can draw whenever you want or play music whenever you want, that sounds amazing to me,
Yeah.
But that's not what you're fed. You're fed like, go to the big school, be the big doctor, be the big dancer, singer, whatever it is, but that's not what life is. So
and I think to piggyback off of that, being a comic creator as well, it is I wanted it's almost like you just romanticize it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like that with any dream job. You romanticize what this thing is and what it would be and what you would be if you were able to accomplish these things. And there are some good things about that, but at the end of the day, if you're so focus driven in your entire life, to just get to that next level in your career, and then you finally get there, and then you look back and you realize that, this is not what life is about.
Right.
What life is about interacting with the people around you, and making a difference in their lives and allowing them to do the same for you. And I think that this movie really hit that message on the nose. Because, just like you said, you said it perfectly, is, in the comics industry, Marvel, DC, that would be great to go do that. But at the end of the day, man, I don't know how many stories I've heard where, marriages have fallen apart. Relationships are non-existent with these guys, because they slave away 14, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, 6 or 7 days a week. They have absolutely no life, and their work is amazing. But what is their life amounting to at the end? And I thought, that really struck a chord with me as well. I was able to kind of look at my own life, because I work a 9 to 5, and I'm very thankful for it, and I love it. I've been blessed with a great employer, and who supports what I do on the side, and making comics. And essentially I have 2 full-time jobs. But I actually have learned that I think I may actually prefer it this way, as opposed to the other way, as opposed to doing comics 24/7, because what that would look like realistically, for me, is it's unrealistic, for my situation. And I think it would be a lot more difficult, and a lot more it would, I believe, take away from what life is supposed to be. And like I said, I think this movie really hit that with a home run.
My wife and I were actually just talking about this idea of, like, the desire to be famous, whether, as I said before, artist, singer, doctor, whatever it is, like, and she made the point, like, would you rather be famous to a bunch of people that you don't know, that after you die are probably going to forget about you? Or would you rather be famous in the sense of your kids and your grandkids and your grandkids think back on, man, Grandpa Chad was this amazing artist, and look at what he did, not that kind of thing. Like, would you want your legacy to carry on that way?
Yeah.
And if I were to be completely vulnerable, for me, I spent so much of my life going after the first one. Like, I want to be, discovered, and my art out there, and that kind of thing. And it really leads to an empty life, and really, for me, a midlife crisis, where you get to the point where you're like, yeah, that's not going to happen. It's very unlikely that that's going to happen. But what is happening is I've got 4 kids that I can influence in a positive way, much like this character in this movie, where he has a whole classroom of kids that he can inspire them to love music. And how many of us have that teacher that we think back, man, that person like changed the course of my life because of what they did or what they said, That's a much better legacy to leave than, I think, just being forgotten. Because even when you think about it, like 0.1% of 0.1% of famous people will ever be remembered beyond their generation. Like, there's very few people we actually think back on that are, incredible artists or whatever, singers or whatever it is. But
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
So switching gears now, which this is for this movie, I'm super excited to talk about. Jeremy, what did you think of the score of this movie?
Well, I mean, I love jazz music.
Yeah.
And you asked a couple of weeks ago for like jazz recommendations.
Yeah.
And I could give you a lot of examples of, great jazz. And I think one of the cool things about jazz is that it encompasses such a wide range. There's the coffee house sort of jazz, like Miles Davis and, John Coltrane, things like that. That's very mellow, very, very smooth, still very intricate, because all jazz is very intricate, but toned down, very timid. And that's what I prefer. And then you have jazz that is just so chaotic and so hectic. And, it's got like 25 different people all on one album, all on one song. And yeah, I think that's what I love about jazz. I think it's, it's very improvisational and things like that. And I think that they were able to incorporate jazz.
Hey guys, can you chill it down just a second? I can hear you all.
He quit.
Only one episode in.
I don't know if you heard that, but my kids were being really loud in the background, and all I could hear was them playing their game. And I was like, no, we cannot have this. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just saying I like the improvisational nature of jazz, and I think that they did a really good job of using jazz as a medium to like help you understand what the dynamic of what's happening visually, if that makes sense. So like with it being a sad part, it's still jazz. It's almost like it's one song throughout the whole movie that, you know, gets that tension when it needs to be tense, and, you know, it's happy and, you know, things like that when it needs to be happy. And it was almost like it was just one song that they were able to manipulate and follow the pulse of the movie. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Chad, what about you?
Well, I'm pretty ignorant to jazz, and I don't understand that. I know that it's very intricate and there's a lot of theory that goes into it, but I just don't have that appreciation for it because I don't understand it. So that's more on me than it is on the music. So jazz is not my favorite music. I mean, I do like kind of the background jazz. I can roll with that. But I was actually really impressed to find out that Trent Reznor was one of the producers on the soundtrack. And I was listening to it a bit before our show. And so there's large sections of it that are actually more kind of electronic and like a little bit harder, which is what I like. And so, yeah, I think the soundtrack absolutely fit the movie. I think it was awesome that, you know, as someone that doesn't really understand or appreciate jazz, it was music that I did enjoy.
Yeah,
thought it matched well with the movie, and I don't really have much to say beyond that because I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to jazz. But.
Sure, yeah, I'm not as well versed in music theory and music as Jeremy is, but I love jazz, and I think jazz, if I had to pick a favorite type of music, a favorite genre of music, it would be jazz, because it has, like Jeremy said, it has so many different, you can do so many different things with it.
Yeah.
It can be the smooth, you know, coffee shop background, you know, jazz music, or it can just be this experience where you are almost like just in the music. It's that powerful, and
it's like Snarky Puppy.
Yes, yes, I was about to say Snarky Puppy is a perfect example of just the chaotic, fun, jump in the deep end of hurricane jazz. And I love Snarky Puppy. I also really dig a guy named Kamasi Williams. Okay. He kind of dabbles in all different types of jazz. And I really like his work a lot. I think if you really like you know, the music of soul, I think Kamasi Williams and Snarky Puppy, kind of those two worlds, kind of, you know, that's exactly what the soundtrack is. And definitely, you know, go check those out if you've not heard them before, because they're fantastic. But I think the thing that really struck me as an artist, the thing that struck me the most about the music and in the movie itself was when he gets lost in playing the piano. When he just, you know, it's almost like just he gets taken away into that, you know, that realm of Zen or whatever it was in the movie. You know, like it's just like when he has that, you know, I think every person, not just every artist, every person has that. You know, you have that thing that brings you peace, that brings you, you know, just kind of a place of calm. And, you know, for me, I've had many times where I have just been listening to a coffee shop jazz, or I really like lo-fi as well. And I'll have that on while I'm drawing, and I can literally, like, I completely resonated with getting lost hours can pass and I won't even realize it. It's just like that. Yeah, and it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, this is something really special. It's really interesting, and I loved seeing that in the movie. I love the impact that music had on him and the ability to completely transform his surroundings and his mental state, because music has that power. It has that, it can touch your soul in those ways. And I thought they did a great job, just kind of depicting that and bringing that to life for sure.
Yeah. Chad, you mentioned Trent Reznor, and I had heard that about him being one of the producers on that. And it reminded me that I saw him, or I heard him on a documentary one time talk about music like in this age, and he said the technology has gotten to where anybody who wants to can make an entire song, all of the instruments, they can sing into their phone and create music, but that hasn't it hasn't created more good music. And in fact, depending on who you ask, it's done the exact opposite. It's created more bad music. And he, talked about the fact that, he was a classically trained piano player, and that gave him that foundation that he needed. Yeah. Because a lot of times people think about Nine Inch Nails and they're relegated to, like 90s techno music, when in reality that band, and mostly Trent Reznor, he's a genius, and I think that he brings that to a situation like this where he's producing on a song that let's not make this like cookie cutter thing. Let's not just go to like a website and find like fun jazz music and okay, there's the score. He brings that intentionality and that foundation in music. But yeah, love Trent Reznor.
Yeah,
he's good.
Cool. All right. Well, to wrap this up, what were your favorite moments of Soul, Chad?
Favorite moments? Yeah, obviously the scene that we already talked about was my number one favorite moment. That scene where he turns to the famous jazz player and asks, like, what do we do now? That was definitely it. Probably when 22 gets her chance to come back, that was awesome. And we didn't talk about this, but the other thing I really love about this movie is that it's 95% an all Black cast, African American cast. And it's one of those movies where I'm glad they didn't make a point of that. And I don't want to sound like the cranky old white guy here, but I don't think making white characters Black, like a Black Superman and a Black Batman and a Black whatever, I don't think that's the answer to like getting past all of our social issues. I think creating African American movies with African American characters, original stories is the answer. And I think this is one of those movies that does it. I caught myself halfway through not even thinking about the fact that these were all Black characters. Like I didn't even think about it. It wasn't an issue. So I'm just happy that they didn't upfront say, here's our Disney movie or all Black cast.
Here's our new Black movie.
Really.
I just want us to get to a place as a society where we don't need to do that anymore, where it's just like, here's a movie with all African American cast. It's an amazing story, amazing movie, and I feel like this gave like that glimpse of hope of where, as a society, we can go. So,
or just like here's a movie with great characters,
exactly,
and don't even talk about any of the other stuff. It's just like don't get me wrong. Like I think we need to address that right now where we're at. But like you said, it really does like it. It gives that glimmer of hope of like one day we won't need to like specifically say this is, you know, a movie for this specific group of people, or this is a movie for this, you know, that features this group of people. It's just a movie with people. And it's a movie with characters that is a good story, and nothing else really matters. It's just that. And this movie did that so well. You're absolutely right.
Yep.
So I think for me, my favorite moment, well, I guess it's not so much a moment, it is my favorite aspect about this movie is just how original the approach was. You've never seen characters before like this, which is really impressive to do.
Yeah.
And Pixar does that, man. Like Disney, Pixar, they like Inside Out. Another example, so original, such an original take on a very specific topic. And, you know, I mean, yeah, of course you pull from different things, but like just the art style of Soul, like with the different characters in, you know, the afterlife or the beyond, you know, realm, like how they looked, how they moved, how they interacted with each other. All of it was so creatively different. Yeah. And you've never seen that before anywhere else. Yeah. And I loved that so much. So I think that was my favorite thing about it. And I think my favorite moment of the movie was where Jamie Foxx's character just gets lost on the music. Mm-hmm. I think, you know, both those moments throughout the movie, I think they were powerful for me. And I think I really, and I really dug those moments a lot. Jeremy, what about you?
So this was, I watched the movie probably, well, I guess the first day that it came out. So it's been, you know, a month or so ago. I can't remember when it came out, but, so I don't remember what it's called. So you guys will help me with that, hopefully. But that realm where, like where the lost people go. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
And the guy on the pirate ship.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not really water that they're in.
It's like sand.
But there's a pirate ship. You know, I just thought that was really interesting way of communicating the feeling of being lost. Right? You're in the desert and your only hope is this guy in a pirate ship. You know what I mean? Like it's just like no one would ever think about that except for they did. And it, I don't know. I just liked that specific part. And they went back and forth a couple of times from that area.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my favorite part.
There was about that. There was something I looked at Robin when we were watching it, and there's a thing in C.S. Lewis's The Great Divorce, where he talks about essentially when people, you know, who they grumble their whole lives, and you know they. And then when they end up in the Great Divorce, they end up in hell. They aren't human anymore. They're grumbles. And so like they become these creatures. And I thought like this was like literally that idea played out. And I like it struck that because The Great Divorce is my favorite C.S. Lewis novel. And I thought that was a really interesting thing because also the concept that, you know, 22 doesn't become a grumble necessarily because of a choice that she made. I mean, she did make choices to not, you know, that she just wanted to be there and she wanted to stay. But then, you know, like it was, you know, that her chance to go to Earth was kind of taken from her. And so she ran away because she believed the lie that, you know, that her thing, her niche that would that sparked her wasn't actually hers, it was his. And so she runs off and becomes this grumble because of something that somebody else did to her. I just thought that was a really interesting concept as well.
Yeah. Nice.
Co-starring my cat, by the way.
Yeah.
Great use of the mute button.
She's just, yeah. Oh yeah. Thanks. So all right. Really quick before we rate it, Jeremy, what was your least favorite moment?
The ending, and it was just, it was the way that I interpreted it. That like you had this fork in the road moment, and I felt like he took the selfish one. I felt like the narrative was taking you throughout the whole movie, that all this that you're putting all this effort into is not what is actually going to make you happy. What you're already doing is what is going to bring you happiness. So I felt like, that it just hit me wrong, I guess. Yeah,
that's fair. Chad, what about you?
I have two, and I'll be real quick. The first one is the ending as well, because I was really expecting to see what was going to become of 22. And I thought later in life, they would meet up again. Like I almost thought like he was going to go to a cafe and she was going to be the waitress or something. And they would just like meet up again.
Of Batman 3
randomly. Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing I thought, you all mentioned about the lost people. I thought it was interesting that they made both heaven and hell unattractive. Like the idea of like getting on that conveyor belt going up to heaven.
The bug zapper in the sky.
Yeah, it was like, I wouldn't want to get on that either. Like that sounds boring to me. And that was just interesting. They put it that way. But I also think the lost people was very good, because that's, I think, as you were saying, from Christian perspective, is very much the case that you get what you want. Like you, after death, like if you don't believe in God and you don't want any of that, that's exactly what you're going to get. Or if you want God and you believe in God, that's what you're going to get. So it just that whole idea of being lost in that way was very was really well done. So
yeah. No, well, you took mine. But the other one that I have is this is silly, but not really. When the dog dies, the dog comes back. But do you remember the part where 22 or Jamie Foxx's character goes into the dog, and the dog just ends up on the conveyor belt? And I'm just like, you just killed a dog. Like, did nobody else recognize that the dog just died? Of course, then they brought the dog back, but or maybe not. See, and I've thought way too much about this. So like the dog is on the conveyor belt. The dog doesn't know any better. So who's to say that the dog that comes back to the dog is a different dog? Yeah. See, they killed a dog in this movie. Sneakily, they killed a dog. And I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, I can't handle that in movies or TV shows. No,
but my heart immediately broke.
Yeah.
Like when that dog, like the ghost dog, popped up on the conveyor belt, I was like, no. He was so sad.
Yeah.
So, but then they kind of redeemed themselves when he came back. But I was like, yeah, Disney Pixar, you're treading on thin ice here, guys.
True.
All right. Well, so let's rate this thing, guys. Jeremy, our rating system, by the way, folks, we have a very intricate, very specific rating system here. So it's premiere night, matinee, dollar theater, movie rental, avoid it, or kill it with fire. Like you're going to want out of your way to destroy this thing. So out of those choices, Jeremy, what do you got?
I think it's a matinee.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean,
what makes it not a premiere night for you?
Well, like I said, I watched it when it immediately came out, but that was just because it was Disney
COVID
Plus.
Yeah.
I didn't have to go anywhere. I could just sit in my sweatpants and watch it. But I want to reserve premiere night for the best movies of all time. Like
that's fair.
I don't want to be the guy that gives everything an A.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
You're that mean professor.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, like Godfather premiere night. Right?
Okay,
You know
gotcha.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, for me it's a matinee.
All right, that's fair. Chad, what about you?
I agree. I'm going matinee. It was a good movie, but it wasn't on the same level as Toy Story or Cars. So.
Okay. All right, cool. I'm going premiere night. Actually,
Okay.
this is one of my favorite Disney Pixar movies they've ever made. I think it just hit me in some really creative ways that I think it was so original. The music was so powerful, and the story was just really, really good. So for me, I actually put it up there with the Toy Story movies. I thought it was amazing. So, yeah. All right, guys. So
We did it.
we did it. The first review of season 3
That's right.
in your face, everybody. So thank you all for tuning in to the Dastardly Dingoes podcast. Remember to hit like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Also hit that bell to be notified when we have a new episode. So everybody, as always, have fun, be safe, and don't wait for this week to be yours. Make it so. See you next time, everybody.